Hello there, and welcome to this SleepyBotanica. Tonight, we begin with something that sounds almost impossible. In the 1960s, agricultural trials in parts of Europe recorded yields that quietly unsettled scientists. Fields that should have been exhausted, depleted, even abandoned, were producing over 100 tons of biomass per acre, year after year, without synthetic fertilizer, without irrigation, and without replanting. The same plant, when cut back, would return to full height in just a few weeks. Again and again, with no inputs, no intervention, and no visible decline. For most crops, this would contradict everything we understand about nutrient cycles, soil depletion, and energy balance in ecosystems. And yet, the data was there, carefully recorded, measured, and repeated, as if the plant was not simply growing, but participating in a deeper rhythm of the earth. You do not need to resolve that contradiction right now. You can let it rest quietly in the background of your thoughts, like a distant light you notice without needing to approach. Because in this moment, there is nothing you need to figure out, nothing you need to hold together, and nothing you need to chase. You have already done enough for today, and this space is simply for softening. Take a slow breath in, not too deep, just enough to feel it arrive, and then let it go gently, without effort. Again, breathe in and slowly out, as if the air itself knows the way and you do not need to guide it. Beneath the surface of the soil, far below what we usually notice, roots are moving. Not quickly, not forcefully, but steadily, persistently, finding pathways through darkness. Some plants extend their roots far deeper than most crops ever could, passing through fragile topsoil, through layers shaped by seasons and time, and into mineral-rich subsoil where elements have rested undisturbed for centuries. Potassium, calcium, phosphorus, drawn slowly upward through living tissue, carried into leaves that move gently in open air. And when those leaves fall, or are cut and returned to the earth, they release those minerals back into the surface layers, not as something newly added, but as something remembered. In soil science, this process is known as nutrient cycling. It is not new. It is one of the oldest systems on Earth. Long before industrial fertilizers, before synthetic nitrogen, before large-scale agriculture, ecosystems sustained themselves through continuous cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. Nothing was wasted, nothing was forced, everything was transformed. Somewhere along the way, we began to believe that fertility must be manufactured, that it must be packaged, transported, and applied repeatedly, and that without constant input, the system would fail. But there are still systems, quiet and largely unnoticed, that operate differently. Imagine a plant that sends its roots 10 feet into the soil, reaching depths inaccessible to most crops. Imagine a plant that draws nutrients from those depths and concentrates them in its leaves. Imagine those leaves breaking down not over weeks, but within days, returning those nutrients rapidly to the surface, as if the soil itself were breathing upward. You do not need to decide whether that feels surprising or natural. You can simply notice it, the way you might notice clouds moving slowly across the sky, or the steady rhythm of distant rain. Let your shoulders relax a little more. Let the muscles around your eyes soften. Let your breath settle into its own quiet pattern, in and out, without effort. Tonight, we are not here to argue with the world or to challenge anything directly. We are not here to force understanding. We are here to drift slowly through a story that unfolds like roots in the dark, quietly, patiently, without needing to be seen. And as you continue to listen, you may begin to sense something subtle. Beneath all the complexity, all the systems, all the structures we build, there remains a quieter intelligence, one that does not rush, does not compete, and does not demand. It simply grows. Somewhere in that quiet growth, there may be a different kind of abundance, one that does not need to be purchased, controlled, or repeated on schedule, but simply allowed. For now, just rest here at the edge of that idea. There's nothing you need to hold on to. Let it drift gently like a seed settling into soft soil, waiting without effort for whatever comes next. There's something even more unusual about this plant, something most people never notice at first. It does not just grow quickly. It changes what happens beneath the surface, accelerating processes that usually take weeks into something that unfolds in days. In controlled observations, when fresh leaves from certain deep-rooted plants are added to soil or compost, microbial activity increases almost immediately. Temperatures rise, decomposition speeds up. Materials that would normally sit unchanged begin to soften, darken, and transform into humus far more rapidly than expected. Not through force, but through compatibility, as if the plant and the soil already understand each other. And you do not need to analyze that. You can simply let the idea settle gently as you begin to follow your breath again. Take a slow inhale through your nose, steady and quiet. Feel the air move down into your chest, expanding just slightly, not forced, just enough. Then exhale slowly, letting everything soften on the way out. Again, inhale, calm and unhurried, and exhale, longer this time, allowing your body to release whatever it has been holding. As your breathing begins to slow, you may notice small shifts in your body. The muscles around your shoulders begin to loosen. The weight of your body feels a little heavier, more supported. Your jaw softens, and your tongue rests more naturally. There's nothing you need to adjust. Your body already knows how to do this, just like the soil. Beneath the ground, there's no urgency, no rushing, only movement that follows natural timing. Roots extend not because they are told to, but because they are responding to something deeper, something consistent. Some plants develop what scientists describe as deep taproots, structures that move vertically through layers of soil, sometimes reaching depths of 2 to 3 meters. These roots do not compete at the surface like grasses or shallow crops. Instead, they access reserves that have remained untouched for long periods of time. Water stored deep below, minerals that have slowly settled over decades, elements that are present but not immediately available to most plants. And as these roots move downward, they also create pathways, tiny channels in the soil that improve structure, increase aeration, and allow water to move more freely. Even after the roots die back, those pathways remain, quietly improving the environment for everything around them. This is sometimes referred to as biological soil engineering, a process where living organisms reshape the physical and chemical properties of the earth without machinery, without external input, and without disruption. You can imagine it now, slowly, a root moving through dark soil, not forcing its way, but finding space, adjusting, continuing downward. Around it, the soil shifts slightly, opening just enough to allow passage. Water follows, air follows, life follows, and above the surface, you might see only leaves moving gently in the wind, unaware of the quiet architecture forming below. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your chest to sink a little deeper, as if gravity itself is becoming softer, more supportive. There is a rhythm here, one that mirrors your own breathing. Inhale, expansion. Exhale, release. Roots extend, leaves grow, leaves fall, soil renews. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. In ecological systems, this is part of a larger cycle often described as the nutrient loop. Plants draw elements upward, microbes break them down, and the soil receives them again in forms that can be reused. It is continuous, balanced, and remarkably efficient. And yet, it is so quiet that it is easy to overlook. As your breathing becomes slower, you may notice that your thoughts begin to drift as well. Not disappearing, just moving more slowly, like clouds that no longer feel the need to gather. You do not need to follow any one thought. You can let them pass, just as roots pass through layers of soil without resistance. Let your shoulders drop a little further. Let your arms feel heavier. Let your eyelids rest, even if they are still open, as if they are preparing to close on their own at their own pace. There is no need to hurry that either, because just like the systems beneath the soil, everything here is already unfolding exactly as it should. And as you continue to breathe, slowly and quietly, you may begin to sense that what is happening within your body is not separate from what is happening in the earth. It follows the same pattern. Gentle movement, quiet transformation, and a steady return to balance. You are not outside of that system. You are part of it. For a long time, the numbers did not make sense. Even when recorded carefully, even when repeated across seasons, they seemed to sit just outside the boundary of what agronomy considered realistic. In conventional agriculture, yield is constrained by inputs. The amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium available in the soil directly influences how much a crop can produce. Remove those inputs and yields decline. That is the expected pattern, consistent across most systems. But in certain documented cases, a different pattern appeared. Fields that received no synthetic fertilizer, no manure, and minimal water input continued producing extremely high biomass yields. Not for one season, not as an anomaly, but consistently, year after year. In some trials, total annual biomass exceeded 100 tons per acre when multiple harvests were combined. That level of productivity would normally require significant external inputs, careful management, and highly controlled conditions. And yet, here it was, occurring quietly without those supports. You do not need to resolve that contradiction. You can simply notice it, the way you notice something slightly unusual in the distance, without needing to approach. Take a slow breath in, and let it move gently through your chest. Then exhale, allowing your body to soften just a little more. Again, inhale, steady and calm. And exhale, longer this time, as if the breath is carrying weight away from you. As your breathing slows, you may begin to feel your body settling more deeply into the surface beneath you. There's nothing you need to hold up anymore. Gravity is doing that for you. Now imagine a field, quiet and open under a soft sky. There is no machinery, no noise, no urgency, only rows of plants growing steadily. When they reach a certain height, they are cut back, not completely removed, just trimmed, and then, over the next few weeks, they return, rising again to nearly the same height, as if nothing had been taken from them. This process repeats several times within a single growing season. Each time, the plant regenerates from its existing root system without needing to be replanted. This type of growth is known as perennial regrowth, where energy stored in the root system supports rapid above-ground development. Unlike annual crops, which must complete their life cycle in a single season, perennials maintain continuity, allowing them to respond more efficiently to environmental conditions. But even among perennials, such rapid and repeated regrowth is uncommon. Part of the explanation lies below the surface. Deep-rooted plants have access to a much larger volume of soil. They can draw water during dry periods and access nutrients that shallow-rooted species cannot reach. This gives them a form of stability, a buffer against fluctuations that would limit other crops. Another factor is leaf composition. Some plants produce leaves with relatively low lignin content, meaning they contain less structural fiber and break down more quickly after being cut. When these leaves are returned to the soil, either as mulch or compost, they decompose rapidly, releasing nutrients in a form that can be reused almost immediately. This creates a feedback loop. The plant draws nutrients from deep layers. The leaves return those nutrients to the surface. Soil organisms process them, and the plant uses them again. Not a linear system, but a cycle. And cycles, by nature, do not deplete in the same way linear systems do. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your mind to rest within that idea. A system that feeds itself. A system that does not rely on constant external input. A system that continues quietly without interruption. There is no urgency in it, no pressure. Only repetition, gentle and steady. Now let your shoulders soften a little more. Let your hands feel heavier. Let your breath become almost effortless, as if it is happening on its own. Because it is, just like the processes beneath the soil. There is no need to control them, no need to accelerate them. They unfold at their own pace, guided by conditions that have been in place far longer than we have. And, as you rest here, you may begin to sense that the idea of impossible is often just a reflection of what we expect to see, not necessarily what is actually possible. In the quiet of the field, nothing feels impossible. There is only growth, only renewal. Only the steady movement of life repeating itself in ways that are easy to overlook, but never truly absent. And as a thought drifts gently through your mind, you can let it go, just as easily, allowing yourself to settle deeper into stillness, where nothing needs to be proven and nothing needs to be explained. There's a quieter part of this story, one that does not begin with data or measurements, but with a single person noticing something that others had already forgotten. In the mid-20th century, a horticulturist in England began studying a plant that most people had long overlooked. Not because it was rare, but because it was too common to attract attention. It grew easily, required little care, and did not fit neatly into the emerging model of modern agriculture. His name was Lawrence Hills. He was not searching for something extraordinary, at least not at first. His interest began with a question that seems simple when spoken slowly. What if certain plants could support soil fertility in a way that did not require continuous external input? At the time, agriculture was changing rapidly. Synthetic fertilizers were becoming widely available, and the system of farming was shifting toward predictable, standardized inputs. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, measured, applied, repeated. It was efficient, but it was also dependent. And in that growing system, plants that did not require those inputs were quietly set aside. Hills began collecting different varieties of a particular deep-rooted plant, growing them side by side, observing their differences carefully. He documented growth rates, leaf composition, resistance to disease, and regrowth after cutting. This was not dramatic work. It was slow, methodical, patient, season after season, observation after observation. Eventually, one variety stood out. It produced more biomass than the others. Its leaf contained higher concentrations of potassium. It resisted disease, and, unlike some related varieties, it did not spread uncontrollably by seed. It remained where it was planted, stable, predictable, contained. This variety would later be known as Bocking 14. You do not need to remember the name. You can simply hold the idea of a plant that grows, returns, and stays where it belongs. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to settle a little deeper. Because what happened next is not what you might expect. Hills had something valuable. A plant that could improve soil, reduce the need for purchased inputs, and grow reliably across different conditions. In most systems, that kind of discovery would be protected, patented, controlled. But he chose a different path. Instead of restricting access, he shared it. Freely. He sent root cuttings to gardeners, farmers, and researchers. Small pieces of the plant, capable of growing into full systems on their own. No cost, no ownership, no limitation, just distribution. And slowly, quietly, the plant spread. Across gardens in England, across small farms, across continents. Not through markets or supply chains, but through people. Through hands passing something simple from one place to another. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your body continues to soften. Your breathing is slower now. Your thoughts are quieter. And somewhere in the background, this story continues to unfold. Because there is something unusual about a system that cannot be easily controlled. A plant that grows from a fragment. A resource that does not require repeated purchase. A process that does not depend on centralized production. In ecological terms, this is resilience. The ability of a system to sustain itself, to recover, and to continue without needing constant external reinforcement. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It simply persists. Now imagine a small garden. Nothing elaborate. Just soil, a few plants, and time. In one corner, a cluster of leaves grows steadily, cut back occasionally, returning each time with quiet consistency. No fertilizer bags, no complex schedule, just a rhythm. Growth, cutting, return. And beneath it, unseen, roots continue their slow movement through the soil, connecting layers, moving nutrients, reshaping the structure below. You do not need to manage it. You do not need to force it. You simply allow it. Let your shoulders relax a little more. Let your breathing become even softer. In and out. There is no urgency here, no pressure. Only a steady, continuous process that does not ask for attention, but continues whether it is noticed or not. And as you rest with that image, you may begin to sense something deeper. That systems like this do not disappear easily. They may be forgotten, they may be overlooked, but as long as even a small part remains, they can return. Quietly, naturally, without effort. Just like the breath you are following now. Steady, unforced, always there, even when you are not thinking about it. And as that thought settles gently, you can let yourself drift a little further into that same quiet persistence where nothing needs to be held and nothing needs to be controlled. There is a depth to this plant that is easy to overlook because most of it cannot be seen. What appears above the surface, the leaves, the stems, the repeated cycles of growth, is only a small expression of a much larger system unfolding below. In soil science, root architecture determines far more than simple plant stability. It defines access to water, to minerals, to microbial networks that exist far beyond the reach of shallow-rooted crops. Some plants develop fibrous root systems that spread outward near the surface. These are efficient for quickly absorbing nutrients that are already present, but they are limited in depth. When the topsoil dries or becomes depleted, these plants struggle. But other plants, fewer in number, develop what is known as a taproot system. A central root that moves downward, sometimes reaching depths of 2 to 3 meters, occasionally even further depending on soil structure. These roots do not compete at the surface. They descend, slowly, steadily, finding pathways through compacted layers, moving through zones that have remained largely undisturbed. And as they move, they do something subtle but important. They connect different layers of the soil profile, linking what is available below with what is needed above. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that downward movement. Not forced, not hurried, just continuous. At those deeper levels, the soil composition changes. There's less organic matter, but more mineral content. Elements like potassium, calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus exist in forms that are not immediately accessible to most crops. They are present, but inactive, waiting. When deep-rooted plants reach these layers, they begin to absorb those elements, incorporating them into their tissues. The minerals move upward through the plant's vascular system, carried along with water, eventually becoming part of the leaves. And when those leaves are cut or fall naturally, they return to the surface. This process is sometimes described as dynamic nutrient accumulation, not because the plant creates nutrients, but because it relocates them, from depth to surface, from inaccessibility to availability. And it does so quietly, without disruption. Take another slow breath in. Let your chest rise gently. And then exhale, allowing your body to soften further into stillness. Because beneath this process, there's another layer, one that is even more subtle. As roots move through the soil, they release compounds known as root exudates. These are small amounts of sugars, amino acids, and other organic molecules that feed microorganisms in the surrounding soil. Bacteria, fungi, and other microscopic life forms respond to these signals. They gather, they interact, they form networks. Some of these networks, particularly those involving mycorrhizal fungi, extend far beyond a single plant. They connect multiple plants together, allowing for the exchange of nutrients, water, and chemical signals. A kind of quiet communication. Not visible, not audible, but active. In these systems, the soil is not just a medium. It is a living structure, constantly adjusting, responding, and evolving. And deep-rooted plants play a central role in maintaining that structure. They create pathways for air and water. They stabilize the soil. They bring nutrients upward. And when their roots eventually decay, they leave behind channels that remain open, improving the environment for future growth. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes part of the next cycle. Now, let your shoulders relax even more. Let your arms feel heavier. Let your breath slow naturally without effort, in and out. There is a rhythm here that does not require tension. It continues whether you observe it or not, just like your breathing, just like the processes beneath the soil. And as you rest here, you may begin to sense that much of what sustains life is happening beyond what we usually notice. Not hidden exactly, just quiet, easy to overlook, but always present. And perhaps there's something calming in that. The idea that not everything depends on constant input or control. That some systems are already complete, already functioning, already balanced in ways that do not require intervention. You do not need to manage them. You do not need to improve them. You can simply allow them to be. And as that thought settles, gently and without pressure, you can let yourself drift a little deeper into that same quiet pattern, where everything continues, steadily, naturally, without effort. There is one detail that continues to stand out, even among all the unusual characteristics we have explored so far. It is not just how this plant grows, or how deep its roots extend, but how quickly it returns what it gathers back to the soil. In most organic systems, decomposition takes time. Leaves, stems, and plant matter break down gradually, influenced by temperature, moisture, and microbial activity. In composting systems, this process can take weeks, sometimes months, before nutrients become fully available again. This delay is expected. It is part of the natural pace of biological transformation. But certain plants do not follow that slower pattern. When their leaves are cut and placed onto the soil surface, or added to a compost system, something different happens. Microbial activity increases rapidly. Heat begins to build. The structure of the plant material softens almost immediately. Within a relatively short period, sometimes as little as 48 hours, the leaves begin to collapse into a dark, nutrient-rich form that integrates easily into the surrounding soil. Not completely finished, but already transformed enough to become active again within the cycle. This speed is not accidental. It is influenced by the internal composition of the plant itself. Leaves that are low in lignin and cellulose, the structural compounds that make plant material rigid and slow to decompose, are far more accessible to soil microbes. Without heavy fiber to break down, microorganisms can move quickly, consuming, converting, and redistributing nutrients at a much faster rate. In addition, these leaves often contain high levels of water and soluble nutrients, which further support microbial growth. The result is not a forced acceleration, but a natural compatibility. The plant breaks down quickly because it is designed to do so. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that transformation. A leaf, freshly cut, resting on the surface of the soil. At first, unchanged, then slowly softening, darkening, returning. Not disappearing, but becoming part of something else. Again, inhale gently, and exhale, letting your body soften even more. because this process mirrors something familiar. A cycle of holding and releasing, of gathering and returning. Nothing is kept permanently. Everything moves. In ecological systems, this kind of rapid decomposition plays an important role. It allows nutrients to re-enter the soil quickly, reducing the gap between uptake and availability. Plants can draw from the soil, return what they no longer need, and draw again. A continuous loop, efficient, quiet, self-sustaining. And because this loop operates locally within the same system, it reduces the need for external input. The soil becomes less dependent on what is added from outside and more responsive to what is already present. Not through control, but through balance. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling deeper. Your muscles are softer now. Your breathing is slower. Your thoughts are moving more gently. There's nothing you need to speed up. Nothing you need to complete. Everything is already unfolding. Now imagine a compost pile. At first, still and unchanged. Then, as these leaves are added, something shifts. Heat begins to rise. Not sharply, but steadily. Microorganisms become more active. Materials that were once separate begin to blend. Edges soften. Textures change. And within a short time, what was once recognizable becomes something new. Dark, rich, alive with potential. This is not destruction, it is transformation, a quiet return to form. And beneath it all there is no urgency, no pressure. Only a process that continues because it is part of a larger system that does not need to be forced. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Let your breath become even softer. In and out. You may begin to notice that your awareness is drifting, not sharply, but slowly, like something settling. That is natural. You do not need to hold on to every word. You do not need to follow every idea. Just like the leaf returning to the soil, you can let each thought soften, dissolve, and become part of a quieter background. Nothing is lost. It simply changes form. And as you rest here, you may begin to sense that the same patterns exist within you. Cycles of tension and release, of activity and rest, of holding and letting go. And right now, you're in the part of the cycle where everything can soften, where nothing needs to be held, where everything is allowed to return. Gently, naturally, without effort. Long before modern agriculture began measuring yield in tons and inputs in precise ratios, this plant was already known, though in a very different way. It was not studied through controlled trials or laboratory analysis. It was observed, used, and remembered through experience. Nearly 2,000 years ago, in the 1st century, a Greek physician named Pedanius Dioscorides documented a plant with thick, dark roots and soft, broad leaves. He included it in a medical text that would remain one of the most influential references in Europe for over a millennium. He described its ability to support healing, particularly in bones and tissues. The plant was prepared, applied, and trusted, not because of chemical analysis, but because of repeated observation across generations. The name given to it reflected that purpose. It came from a word meaning to bring together, or to unite. You do not need to remember the language. You can simply notice the idea. A plant associated with restoration, with joining, with quiet repair. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow that idea to settle gently, because the story continued. Centuries later, in Roman times, another observer, Pliny the Elder, recorded something unusual. When the root of this plant was processed into a paste, it could act almost like an adhesive. Pieces of material, when pressed together with it, would hold. This was not described as unusual or miraculous. It was simply noted, another characteristic among many. Over time, the plant became known by a common name that reflected this property. It was called knit bone, a name that suggests connection, repair, the bringing together of what has been separated. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body soften further, as if something within you is also being gently held together, without effort. Because for many centuries, this is how the plant was understood. Not as a fertilizer, not as a tool for maximizing yield, but as part of a living system, connected to both the body and the earth. It grew in fields, along pathways, near settlements. It was familiar, unremarkable in its presence, but reliable in its use. And then, slowly, as agricultural systems began to change, the focus shifted. The rise of mechanization, the introduction of synthetic inputs, the standardization of crops. Efficiency became the priority, uniformity became the goal, and plants that did not fit easily into that system began to fade from attention. Not because they stopped working, but because they were no longer part of the model. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently across that shift, from a time of observation and relationship to a time of measurement and control. Neither is inherently wrong. They are simply different ways of interacting with the same world. But in that transition, something was lost. Not entirely, not permanently, but quietly. Like a path that is no longer walked, still there, but covered, waiting. Now imagine an old field, not cultivated in the modern sense, just open land where plants grow according to their own patterns. Some are tall, some remain close to the ground, and among them there is one that returns each year, not planted, not removed, simply present. Its roots extend deep, its leaves grow wide, and when they fall, they return to the soil, becoming part of what supports the next cycle. No one measures it, no one records it, but it continues, unchanged. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling deeper into stillness. There's something calming in continuity, in processes that do not depend on attention to exist, in systems that remain, even when they are not actively maintained. And as you rest here, you may begin to sense that knowledge itself can follow a similar pattern. Some knowledge is written, stored, preserved in texts. Other knowledge exists in practice, in repetition, in quiet familiarity, and when it is no longer used, it does not disappear immediately. It simply becomes less visible, until sometimes it is found again, not created, but remembered. And as that thought drifts gently through your mind, you can let it settle without holding on to it, allowing yourself to move slowly into the next part of the story, where something once overlooked begins, quietly, to return. Not all discoveries begin with intention. Some emerge quietly, almost unnoticed at first, shaped by chance rather than design. In the mid-19th century, during a time when Europe was still recovering from widespread food shortages, a man in England began searching for something entirely different. He was not looking for a solution to soil fertility, nor was he trying to transform agriculture. He was looking for glue. His name was Henry Doubleday. At the time, He had already experienced several failed ventures, attempts to produce starch, experiments in manufacturing adhesives, small efforts that did not lead to lasting success. But there was something that stayed with him, something quieter, more persistent than business failure. The memory of famine. In the 1840s, the Irish potato famine had caused widespread suffering. Crops failed, food systems collapsed, and for many who witnessed it, the experience left a lasting impression, a question that did not easily fade. How could something so essential become so fragile? Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let that question drift gently without needing an answer. Because Doubleday's search for glue led him somewhere unexpected. He requested a particular variety of a plant from Eastern Europe, believing it might have useful adhesive properties. But what he received was not exactly what he had asked for. Instead of a single, stable variety, he was sent plants that had naturally crossed with one another, creating what is known in biology as a hybrid. An F1 hybrid. This kind of plant often exhibits what scientists call hybrid vigor or heterosis, where the offspring displays stronger growth, higher productivity, or greater resilience than either parent. At the time, this concept was not fully understood, but what Doubleday observed was unmistakable. The plants grew larger, faster, more consistently, and when harvested, they produced an amount of biomass that exceeded expectations, not slightly, but significantly. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine standing in a quiet field, watching something grow that does not quite align with what you expected. Not dramatically different, but enough to make you pause, enough to make you look again. Doubleday did not ignore it. He shifted his attention. The glue he had been searching for became less important, because what he had in front of him suggested something else entirely. A plant that could produce large amounts of organic matter. A plant that could be harvested repeatedly. A plant that might, under the right conditions, support soil in a way that reduced dependence on external inputs. He began to study it, not in a laboratory, but in the field, through observation, through repetition, through time. Years passed, then decades. He documented growth patterns, yields, seasonal behavior. He explored how the plant responded to cutting, how quickly it returned, how it interacted with the soil. This was not rapid research. It was slow, deliberate, patient. And throughout it there was a quiet intention, shaped not by profit, but by memory. The memory of scarcity, the possibility of abundance. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to relax even more deeply, because there's something calming in that kind of focus. Attention that is not rushed, work that unfolds over time, understanding that grows gradually, like the plant itself. And yet, despite all those years, something unexpected happened. When Doubleday died, much of his work did not continue in the way you might expect. His notes, the records of decades of observation, were lost, destroyed, gone, not through conflict or suppression, but through simple circumstance, a quiet ending to a long period of careful study. Take another slow breath in. And as you exhale, notice how even that does not feel abrupt, just part of a larger pattern. Because in systems like this, knowledge does not always disappear completely. Even when records are lost, the plants remain. The processes continue. The patterns persist. And sometimes, years later, someone else notices. Someone else begins again. not from nothing, but from what is still present. Now imagine that field once more. The plants are still there, growing, returning, unchanged, even without documentation, even without explanation. And as you rest with that image, you may begin to sense something steady beneath it all. That not everything depends on being recorded. Not everything needs to be preserved in writing to continue. Some things endure simply because they are part of the system itself. And as that thought settles gently, you can allow yourself to drift further into that same quiet continuity, where nothing is forced, nothing is rushed, and everything unfolds in its own time. For a time, the plant remained where it had always been, growing quietly, largely unnoticed by the systems that had moved on without it. Agriculture continued to industrialize. Inputs became standardized. Yields became predictable but dependent. And yet, the plant did not disappear. It waited, not actively, not intentionally, just present, in small gardens, in overlooked corners, in places where systems had not fully replaced observation. Then, in the mid-20th century, something shifted again. A new generation of researchers began to look back, not out of nostalgia, but out of curiosity. There were fragments of older ideas, references to unusual yields, mentions of a plant that seemed to behave differently. Incomplete information, but enough to begin asking questions. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that moment of quiet curiosity. Not urgent, not driven, just a simple willingness to look again. One of those who followed that curiosity was the same horticulturist we encountered earlier, Lawrence Hills. But this time, his work took on a broader scope. Instead of focusing on a single plant, he gathered multiple strains, different variations collected from across regions, each one slightly different in growth pattern, leaf composition, resilience. He planted them side by side. Same soil, same conditions, same environment, so that the differences would not be influenced by external variation, but by the plants themselves. This is a foundational approach in experimental horticulture, controlled comparison, not complex, but precise. Over time, he recorded everything: growth rates, regrowth after cutting, leaf density, nutrient composition, resistance to pests and disease, seasonal performance. It was not dramatic work. There were no sudden breakthroughs, only accumulation. Observation layered upon observation. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling further into stillness. Because this kind of work mirrors something deeper, a quiet patience, a willingness to let understanding emerge gradually. And eventually, a pattern became clear. Among all the varieties, one consistently performed better. It grew more reliably, produced more biomass, contained higher concentrations of key nutrients, particularly potassium, and importantly, it did not spread uncontrollably. It was sterile, unable to produce viable seeds, which meant it remained where it was planted, controlled, predictable, balanced. This combination of traits was unusual. High productivity, high nutrient content, low invasiveness, and so this particular variety was selected, refined, and given a name: Bocking 14. You do not need to hold on to the name. You can simply notice the idea of something emerging through careful observation. Not invention, but recognition. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently across that field again. Rows of plants growing under the same conditions. One of them slightly different, not dramatically, just enough. Enough to be noticed, enough to be chosen. In scientific terms, this is selection, not creation, not manipulation, but identification of what already works. And in that process, something quiet is revealed, that sometimes solutions are not built from scratch. They are found, refined, understood more clearly. Now let your shoulders soften even more. Let your breath slow naturally, in and out. Because as this work continued, the implications became more visible. A plant that could produce large amounts of biomass. A plant that could return nutrients to the soil quickly. A plant that did not spread beyond control. A plant that could be grown once and continue for many years. This was not just a curiosity. It was a system, a small one, but complete. And systems like that do not always fit easily into larger structures. Not because they are ineffective, but because they operate differently. They do not require constant input. They do not depend on repeated purchase. They continue, whether they are part of a market or not. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel how your body continues to settle. There's less tension now, less effort, more space. And within that space, the story continues, quietly, moving toward a point where something that works very well begins to encounter something else entirely. Not conflict in the usual sense, but difference between systems that sustain themselves and systems that depend on continuation. And as that distinction begins to form, gently and without pressure, you can let yourself drift a little deeper where the details soften and only the rhythm remains. Once the characteristics of this plant became clearer, the implications slowly expanded beyond the field where it was being studied. At first, the observations were simple. The plant could be cut multiple times during a growing season. Each time, it returned quickly, drawing from its established root system. The leaves it produced contained unusually high concentrations of certain nutrients, particularly potassium, which plays an essential role in plant growth, water regulation, and fruit development. In traditional soil management, potassium is one of the primary elements farmers apply through fertilizer. It supports the development of strong plant tissues and improves resistance to stress. Most agricultural systems rely on mined mineral sources to provide it, which are processed, packaged, and transported before eventually being applied to fields. But here was a plant that gathered potassium naturally from deeper soil layers and concentrated it in its leaves. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that quiet movement once more, roots descending slowly through the soil profile, reaching places where other crops rarely extend. Those roots absorb minerals that have settled over long periods of time. Through the plant's vascular system, those minerals move upward, carried along with water until they become part of the leaves. Then, when the leaves are cut and returned to the soil surface, the nutrients return as well. Not imported, not purchased, simply relocated. This is sometimes described as a biological nutrient pump. A plant draws resources from depth and deposits them where they are needed most, near the surface where other plants grow. The cycle repeats with each harvest. Roots draw downward. Leaves rise upward. Leaves return downward again. A steady circulation between soil layers. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to sink a little deeper into relaxation. Because this cycle has another quality that is easy to overlook. It continues for many years. Unlike annual crops that must be planted again each season, perennial plants maintain their root systems year after year. Once established, they require very little disturbance. No repeated planting. No repeated soil disruption. Just growth, harvest, and return. In some documented cases, plants within this group have remained productive for decades, continuing to generate biomass with only minimal attention. That continuity is significant. In most modern agricultural systems, inputs must be purchased regularly. Fertilizers are applied each season because nutrients are removed with each harvest. The system is designed around a repeated exchange. Inputs enter. Crops are produced. Inputs are required again. But a plant that gathers nutrients from deep layers and returns them locally changes that pattern. The cycle becomes less dependent on external supply, more internal, more contained. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your breathing now feels slower than before. Your shoulders are softer, your muscles are quieter, just like the systems we are describing. Because what emerges here is not simply a plant with useful characteristics. It is a small, self-supporting process, one that can exist within a garden, within a farm, or within a natural ecosystem without requiring constant external reinforcement. And that kind of system behaves differently. It does not expand rapidly. It does not demand attention. It simply persists. Now, imagine a small plot of land. Tomatoes growing in one section, beans climbing slowly upward, and near the edge, a cluster of deep-rooted plants growing steadily. Every few weeks, the leaves are cut and placed around the base of the other plants as mulch. Within days, the leaves soften and begin returning their nutrients to the soil. The tomatoes receive potassium. The soil organisms receive organic matter. The cycle continues. No bag of fertilizer, no measured application, just leaves returning to the earth. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your thoughts drift gently. Because systems like this are not new. They are simply less visible in environments that rely on centralized inputs. And that difference becomes more noticeable when we step back and look at the larger structure of modern agriculture. A structure built around production, distribution, and repeated consumption. Within that structure, solutions that operate independently can appear unusual. Not because they fail, but because they do not follow the same pattern. They do not require constant purchase. They do not depend on supply chains. They grow quietly, locally, wherever the soil allows. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift deeper into calm. Because the story is not about opposition. It is about contrast. Different ways of sustaining fertility. Different rhythms of growth. One system built around repeated inputs, another built around cycles that renew themselves. Both exist. Both continue. But one of them grows almost silently, beneath attention, waiting only for someone to notice it again. And as that idea settles gently, you can let it rest, just like a seed resting quietly in the soil, patient and undisturbed, until the moment when growth begins again. At a certain point, the difference between these two ways of growing becomes more than just technical. It becomes structural. Not in a dramatic or confrontational sense, but in the way two paths slowly move apart over time. Modern agriculture, as it developed through the 20th century, became increasingly dependent on external inputs. This shift was not accidental. It was driven by the need to feed growing populations, to stabilize yields, and to create predictable outcomes across large areas of land. One of the most significant developments in this transformation was the Haber-Bosch process, a method that allowed nitrogen from the atmosphere to be converted into ammonia. This innovation made it possible to produce synthetic fertilizers at scale, dramatically increasing agricultural productivity. It is estimated that a substantial portion of the global population today is supported by food grown using nitrogen derived from this process. And yet, there is a cost. The Haber-Bosch process requires large amounts of energy, primarily from natural gas. It contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. It connects agriculture directly to industrial supply chains and energy markets. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let that information settle without tension. because this is not a story of right or wrong, it is a story of direction. One path moves toward centralized production, standardization, and efficiency. Another path, quieter and less visible, moves toward decentralization, biological cycles, and local resilience. Deep-rooted perennial plants, like the one we have been exploring, belong to that second path. They do not eliminate the need for agriculture. They do not replace entire systems, but they introduce a different possibility. A system where some of the inputs are generated within the system itself, where fertility is not entirely dependent on external supply, where cycles close more tightly, reducing the need for constant replenishment. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your body continues to soften. Your breathing is slower now. Your thoughts are less defined, more like gentle movement than fixed patterns. Because when we look at these two systems side by side, the difference is not only in what they produce, but in how they sustain themselves. One requires ongoing input to maintain output. The other builds internal capacity over time. Neither is completely independent, but they operate on different principles. And when those principles exist within the same world, they do not always align, not through conflict, but through contrast. Now imagine two fields. In one, fertilizers are applied each season, measured carefully, adjusted based on soil tests and expected yields. In the other, a network of plants grows, returns organic matter, and gradually builds soil fertility through repeated cycles. Both fields produce. Both continue. But the rhythm feels different. One is managed externally. The other evolves internally. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift between those two images. There's no need to choose, no need to decide. Just notice. The difference in movement, the difference in pace, the difference in dependence. And as that awareness settles gently, the story continues, moving toward a moment where these differences become more visible. Not through direct confrontation, but through subtle shifts in attention and perception. Sometimes, change does not happen through direct action. It happens through perception, through the way information is received, interpreted, and quietly spread. In the early 2000s, attention briefly returned to the plant we have been following, but not in the way its previous observers might have expected. Regulatory agencies began reviewing certain compounds found within the plant, specifically a group of naturally occurring chemicals known as pyrrolizidine alkaloids. These compounds, when consumed in large quantities over extended periods, have been associated with potential liver toxicity. From a scientific perspective, this is not unusual. Many plants produce compounds as part of their natural defense systems. The presence of such compounds does not automatically make a plant harmful in all contexts, but it does require understanding of how it is used. In this case, the concern focused on internal consumption, supplements, teas, capsules. And so, guidance was issued by organizations such as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, advising against the use of these products for ingestion. The reasoning was specific, limited, contextual. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow that distinction to remain clear, without needing to expand it. Because what happened next was not part of the formal guidance itself. It was part of how that guidance was received. The word toxic began to circulate. Not in detailed explanations, not in carefully defined contexts, but in simplified form. And as information moved outward, something subtle changed. The distinction between internal use and external use began to blur, between consumption and cultivation, between ingestion and gardening. Garden centers, responding to public concern, began to reduce availability. Some stopped carrying the plant entirely. not because its role in soil systems had changed, not because its biological functions had shifted, but because perception had moved. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that shift not as something sudden, but as something gradual, a quiet movement away, a plant that was once shared freely becoming less visible, less available, not removed entirely, but less present in the places where people would normally encounter it. This is sometimes referred to as informational diffusion, not the loss of knowledge, but the dilution of clarity, where specific information becomes generalized, and generalization leads to avoidance. Now imagine a nursery, rows of plants arranged neatly, labels clear, choices available, and one plant, once present among them, is no longer there, not because it cannot grow, not because it has stopped functioning, but because it is no longer offered. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body soften even more deeply. Because beneath this moment, the system itself has not changed. The plant still grows, its roots still extend, its leaves still return nutrients to the soil. Nothing in its biology has shifted, only its visibility. And visibility is something that can change without altering the underlying reality. You may begin to sense that now, that what is present is not always what is seen, and what is unseen is not necessarily absent, just quieter, further from attention, waiting. And as that thought settles gently, you can allow yourself to drift even deeper into stillness, where the story continues, not through what is removed, but through what remains. The change did not happen all at once. There was no single moment when the plant vanished from awareness, no clear line between presence and absence. Instead, it unfolded gradually, almost quietly, as many shifts do. At first, it became less common in garden centers, then less discussed in agricultural circles. Fewer people recommended it. Fewer people planted it, and over time something subtle occurred. Not extinction, but absence from memory. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine how something familiar can slowly fade, not because it has changed, but because attention has moved elsewhere. The plant itself remained exactly as it had always been. Its roots still extended deep into the soil. Its leaves still grew, still returned nutrients, still decomposed quickly. Nothing in its biology shifted. But fewer people encountered it. Fewer people recognized it. And in systems where knowledge is often passed through visibility, through repetition, through shared practice, this kind of absence matters. Because when something is no longer seen, it is no longer considered. And when it is no longer considered, it becomes easier to forget. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to soften further. Because this kind of disappearance is not dramatic. It does not create disruption. It simply creates space, a quiet space where something used to be. Now imagine a garden that once included this plant. The soil is still there, other plants are still growing, but one element is missing, not replaced, just absent. And over time, that absence becomes normal. The system adjusts, not because it is better, not because it is worse, but because it continues. In ecological terms, this is not uncommon. Species appear, species recede, relationships shift. But in this case, the plant did not recede due to environmental pressure. It receded from awareness, and that is a different kind of change. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your breathing now feels almost effortless. Your body is heavier, more settled. Your thoughts are softer, less defined. Because as we move deeper into this story, the tone itself begins to shift. Less about what is missing, more about what remains. Because even when visibility decreases, persistence continues. The plant still grows in certain places, in small gardens, in permaculture systems, in spaces where knowledge is passed directly, not through markets or labels, but through experience, through hands, through observation, through time. Now imagine someone walking through such a garden. Not large, not industrial, just a quiet space. They notice a cluster of leaves growing steadily in one corner. They cut a few, place them around another plant. Days later, the leaves have softened, returning to the soil. They do not analyze it. They do not measure it. They simply observe. And in that observation, knowledge continues. Not written, not broadcast, but lived. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift gently into that image. Because there is something calming in continuity that does not depend on attention. Systems that continue even when they are not widely recognized. Processes that remain intact beneath shifting awareness. And as you rest here, you may begin to sense that disappearance is not always final. Sometimes it is only a movement away from visibility. And what moves away can, in time, return. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, just as it once faded. As this plant moved quietly out of mainstream awareness, another system continued to expand, one built not on cycles within the soil, but on flows of material moving across large distances. The global fertilizer industry grew steadily, becoming a central component of modern agriculture. Nutrients were extracted, processed, transported, and sold, forming a network that connected farms to industrial production facilities and energy sources. Nitrogen from the atmosphere, phosphorus from mined rock, potassium from mineral deposits. Each element refined, packaged, and delivered. This system allowed for consistent yields across vast areas of land. It supported large-scale food production. It made agriculture more predictable. And yet, it also introduced a form of dependence. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow that idea to settle gently. Because dependence is not always negative. It can provide stability. It can support systems that would otherwise struggle. But it also creates connection. A need for continuity. A reliance on ongoing input. In this model, fertility is not generated within the system itself. It is brought in, applied, used, and then required again. A repeating pattern. Inputs, outputs, inputs. Now imagine a farmer preparing for a new season. They assess the soil, calculate nutrient requirements, purchase fertilizer, apply it, plant, grow, harvest, and then begin again. The cycle continues, but it is not closed. It remains open, dependent on what enters from outside. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your body continues to relax. Because when we place this system next to the one we explored earlier, the difference becomes clearer. One system requires ongoing input. The other builds internal cycles. One moves nutrients across distances. The other moves nutrients within the same space. Neither system is entirely independent, but their structures are different, and structure shapes behavior. Now imagine those two systems existing side by side, not in conflict, but in contrast. One large, visible, supported by infrastructure, the other small, quiet, sustained by repetition. And in that contrast, something becomes noticeable. Not a problem, not a solution, just a difference in how fertility is understood, as something that must be supplied, or something that can be grown. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let that distinction soften. There's no need to resolve it, no need to choose. Because tonight, we are not here to compare systems. We are here to observe them, to notice how they move, how they continue, how they shape the world around them. And as you rest in that observation, your body continues to drift deeper into calm. Your breath slower, your muscles softer, your awareness quieter, like soil at night, still, unmoving, yet full of processes that continue gently without interruption. And somewhere within that stillness, the story continues, moving toward a place where what remains begins, slowly, to reappear. Even as awareness faded and systems shifted, the underlying data did not change. Measurements taken decades earlier remained consistent with what could still be observed wherever the plant continued to grow. When conditions are stable, and the plant is allowed to establish fully, it can be cut multiple times within a single growing season. Each cut yields a significant amount of leafy biomass, often measured not in small increments, but in large cumulative volumes over time. In some recorded cases, total annual biomass approached 100 tons per acre when all harvests were combined. Not as a single event, but as a sequence. Cut, regrow, cut again. A repeated pattern that continues across the season. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that rhythm. Growth rising steadily, then gently returning and rising again. Because these numbers are not the result of a single factor. They emerge from the interaction of several processes working together. Deep root systems accessing nutrients beyond the reach of most crops. Rapid regrowth supported by stored energy below the surface. Leaf composition that allows for quick decomposition and nutrient return. And a perennial structure that does not require replanting each year. Each element contributes, not independently, but as part of a system. In agronomy, this kind of interaction is sometimes referred to as system efficiency, where multiple characteristics combine to produce results that exceed what any one factor alone might achieve. It is not that the plant is breaking rules, it is that it is operating within a different set of relationships. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body soften even more deeply, because numbers, when held too tightly, can feel rigid. But here, they do not need to be precise. They can remain as gentle indicators, markers of what is possible under certain conditions. Not something to prove, just something to notice. Now imagine a quiet field once more, not measured, not calculated, just observed. Plants growing in cycles, leaves cut and returned, soil gradually enriched, season after season. Nothing dramatic, nothing sudden, just accumulation. And over time, that accumulation becomes visible, not as a single moment, but as a gradual increase in fertility, a shift in the quality of the soil, darker, richer, more structured. In soil science, this is often described as the buildup of organic matter, a key indicator of soil health. As organic matter increases, the soil's ability to retain water improves, microbial activity becomes more stable, and nutrient availability becomes more consistent. The system becomes more resilient, not dependent on constant correction, but capable of maintaining itself. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how your breathing now feels almost automatic. Your body is heavier, more supported. Because just like the soil, your system also moves toward balance when it is not being forced. There's no need to accelerate, no need to control, only a gradual return to equilibrium. Now imagine placing your hand on that soil. Cool, soft, structured. It does not feel empty, it feels alive, not in a visible way, but in a quiet, underlying sense of continuity. And beneath that surface, roots continue their slow movement. Microorganisms continue their work, nutrients continue to cycle. Nothing stops, even when it is not seen. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift deeper into that image. Because what the numbers show is not just productivity, it is persistence, a system that continues to produce without interruption, without requiring constant external input, without needing to be restarted each season. And As that idea settles gently, you can let it soften, just like the soil beneath your hand, where everything continues quietly, without effort. There's something else about this plant that often goes unnoticed, not because it is hidden, but because it contradicts a common expectation. When people hear about plants that grow quickly and produce large amounts of biomass, there's often an assumption that they will spread uncontrollably, that they will take over, that they will become invasive. But not all plants follow that pattern. Some, despite their productivity, remain contained. In this case, the variety we have been following does not produce viable seeds. It is sterile, which means it cannot spread through natural seeding. It grows only where it is planted. It expands slowly through its root system, but does not move beyond its immediate space unless intentionally divided and replanted. This creates a condition that might be described as controlled abundance, high productivity, but limited expansion. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that balance. Growth that is strong but not aggressive. Presence that is steady but not overwhelming. Because in ecological systems, balance often depends on this kind of relationship. Too much expansion can disrupt. Too little growth can limit function. But when growth and containment exist together, the system stabilizes. Now imagine a small section of land, a garden bed. Within it, the plant grows in one area. It does not spread into every space. It does not compete beyond its place. It remains reliable, predictable. Each time it is cut, it returns. Each time its leaves are used, they provide nutrients. But it does not extend beyond what is needed. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling deeper. Because this idea of controlled abundance reflects something beyond the plant itself. It reflects a different way of understanding growth. Not as expansion without limit, but as presence within boundaries. Enough, but not excessive. Continuous, but not overwhelming. And there is something calming in that, because many systems that demand attention often operate at extremes. Too much, too fast, too constant. But here the rhythm is different, measured, steady, contained. Now imagine returning to that quiet garden. Everything is in place. Nothing is rushing. Nothing is spreading beyond control. Each element exists where it is meant to be, and within that space cycles continue. Leaves grow. Leaves return. Soil deepens. Roots extend. Nothing is forced. Nothing is missing. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to rest in that balance. Because as your body continues to soften, you may begin to sense that the same principle applies here. You do not need to do more. You do not need to expand beyond this moment. You can simply remain, breathing, resting, existing within the space you are in. And that is enough. Just like the plant. Just like the soil. Just like the quiet systems that continue without needing to be seen. And as that thought settles gently, you can drift a little deeper, into a state where everything is already balanced, already supported, and already complete. Even after all the shifts in awareness, the changes in agriculture, and the quiet disappearance from common visibility, one thing remained constant. The plant itself never left. It was not eliminated. It was not lost to extinction. It continued to grow wherever it had already taken root, in small gardens, in isolated farms, in places where knowledge passed quietly from one person to another. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine something remaining exactly where it has always been, unchanged, even as everything around it moves on. Because this is an important distinction. Something can disappear from attention without disappearing from existence. The processes continue. The roots still extend. The leaves still grow and return. Nothing in the system itself has stopped. Only the connection between the system and widespread awareness has thinned. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to soften further. Your breathing is slower now, more natural, because there is something steady in this idea that what works does not always need to be constantly reinforced to continue. Some systems persist simply because they are aligned with conditions that support them. They do not depend on recognition. They do not require validation. They continue because they can. Now imagine a quiet exchange between two gardeners. No large announcements, no formal systems, just a small piece of root passed from one hand to another, a cutting, simple, unremarkable, but capable of becoming a full plant, and then another, and another. This is how some knowledge moves, not through institutions, not through markets, but through direct experience, through repetition, through trust. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let that image settle gently, because there is something calming in continuity that does not rely on scale. Small systems, quiet systems, decentralized systems, they do not expand rapidly, but they endure, and endurance, in ecological terms, is often more significant than visibility. Now imagine that plant growing in a corner of a garden, not highlighted, not labeled, just present. Each season it grows. Each season it is cut. Each season it returns. Nothing changes, and yet everything continues. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift deeper. Because as this story moves forward, it begins to shift again, not toward disappearance, but toward reappearance. Not sudden, not dramatic, but gradual. The way something familiar begins to come back into view, not because it was recreated, but because it was never gone. There are moments when systems begin to shift, not because they are challenged directly, but because the conditions around them change. Costs rise. Resources become less stable. Dependence becomes more visible. And in those moments, attention often turns quietly toward alternatives. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a system that has operated steadily for many years, supported by consistent inputs, predictable supply, and established patterns. At first, everything flows smoothly. Materials are available. Energy is accessible. Processes continue without interruption. But over time, small changes begin to appear. Energy costs fluctuate. Supply chains become more complex. Inputs that were once easily accessible require more coordination, more expense, more planning. Nothing collapses. Nothing stops. But the system becomes more sensitive, more dependent on conditions beyond its immediate control. Now imagine standing at the edge of that system, not inside it, just observing, and noticing that what once felt stable now requires more attention to maintain. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to relax further, because this is where quiet alternatives begin to re-emerge, not as replacements, not as solutions presented suddenly, but as options that have always existed, now becoming more visible. A plant that does not require annual purchase. A system that does not depend on external supply. A cycle that continues locally without interruption. These do not need to compete. They do not need to replace. They simply exist alongside. And when conditions change, their presence becomes more noticeable. Take a slow breath in. And as you exhale, imagine a gardener or a farmer beginning to look more closely at what is already present. Not searching far, not importing something new, just noticing the soil, the plants, the patterns that continue without input. And in that observation, something shifts, not dramatically, just a small change in attention, from what must be added to what is already there. Now imagine returning to that quiet garden once more. The same plant growing steadily, the same leaves returning to the soil, the same roots moving through deeper layers. Nothing about it has changed, and yet it feels different, more relevant, more visible. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling deeper into calm. Because this is how many changes begin, not with disruption, but with recognition. A quiet awareness of something that has always been present, now seen more clearly. And as that awareness gently expands, you may begin to sense that what we call new is often simply remembered. Not invented, not created, but noticed again. And as that thought settles softly, like something returning to the surface after a long time below, you can allow yourself to drift deeper still, where everything becomes quieter, slower, and more at ease. There's a certain kind of knowledge that does not spread quickly. It does not announce itself, does not scale rapidly, and does not seek attention. It moves slowly, often carried through experience rather than instruction, and when it returns, it does so gently, not as a discovery, but as recognition. Take a slow breath in. And as you exhale, imagine remembering something you never fully forgot, something that was always there, just beneath the surface of attention. In recent years, small groups of growers, gardeners, and ecological designers have begun to revisit systems that rely less on external inputs and more on internal cycles. Not as a rejection of modern methods, but as a quiet exploration of alternatives. Within these spaces, the plant we have been following appears again, not widely promoted, not heavily marketed, but present, used in compost systems, placed around crops as mulch, grown at the edges of gardens where it can be cut and returned repeatedly. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to soften even further. Because in these systems, the plant is not treated as something unusual. It is simply part of the process. One element among many. Supporting soil, supporting cycles, supporting continuity. There are no large claims, no dramatic statements, just observation, and over time, that observation becomes familiarity. Leaves are cut, placed on the soil. They soften quickly. The soil darkens. Plants nearby respond. Growth becomes more stable, not instantly, but gradually. And in that gradual change, something becomes clear. Not through measurement alone, but through repeated experience. Take a slow breath in. And as you exhale, imagine standing in such a space, a garden that feels calm, balanced, nothing excessive, nothing missing, everything connected through quiet processes. Now imagine noticing how little is being brought in from outside. No regular shipments, no constant additions, just cycles that continue. And within that, a different sense of stability begins to form, not dependent on external conditions, but rooted in what is already present. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body becoming heavier, more relaxed, because this kind of knowledge does not need to be taught all at once. It unfolds, layer by layer, season by season, and once it is seen, it does not need to be repeated loudly, it simply continues. When we hear the word abundance, it often carries a certain image, large quantities, visible surplus, expansion beyond immediate need. But there is another form of abundance, one that is quieter, less visible, and more stable over time. An abundance that comes not from accumulation, but from continuity. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a system where nothing is wasted, where each part supports the next, where output becomes input again without leaving the system. This is the kind of abundance created through cycles, not through excess, but through balance. The plant we have been following contributes to this kind of system in a very specific way. It gathers nutrients from depth, It produces large amounts of organic material. It returns that material to the surface. And it repeats this process over many years. Not expanding outward, but reinforcing what is already there. Take another slow breath in. And as you exhale, allow your body to settle even deeper. Because this kind of abundance does not require constant growth. It requires continuity, a steady return, a repeated cycle that strengthens the system over time. Now imagine a garden several years into this process. The soil is darker, softer, more structured. Plants growing within it are more resilient, less dependent on external inputs. The system has not expanded dramatically, but it has deepened, and that depth creates stability. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine placing your hand gently on that soil. It feels alive, not in a visible way, but in the sense that it responds. It holds moisture. It supports growth. It continues. This is abundance without excess, fertility without depletion, a system that does not need to be constantly replenished from outside because it renews itself from within. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body fully relaxed now, your breathing slow, your thoughts soft. Because as this story moves toward its deeper layers, it becomes less about the plant itself and more about what it represents. Not a solution, not a replacement, but a reminder that some systems are already complete, already balanced, already capable of sustaining themselves when allowed to continue. And as that idea settles gently, like something returning to rest after a long movement, you can allow yourself to drift even deeper into stillness, where everything is already enough and nothing more is required. There's a kind of memory that does not exist in words, not written in books, not stored in data, but held quietly within living systems. It exists in roots, in soil, in patterns that repeat without needing to be explained. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a root system extending downward through layers of earth that have remained largely unchanged for centuries, each layer holding traces of what came before. Minerals deposited over time, organic matter broken down and transformed, microbial communities forming, dissolving, and forming again. And within all of that, the root continues, not searching in the way we think of searching, but responding, moving toward what is needed, avoiding what is not. This is sometimes described as adaptive growth, where the direction and structure of roots are shaped by environmental signals rather than fixed patterns. It is not conscious, but it is precise. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body softening even more deeply. Because this kind of memory does not require recall. It is not something that needs to be accessed. It is already active, just like your breath, just like your heartbeat, just like the systems beneath the soil. Now imagine that root encountering a layer rich in minerals. It does not stop. It does not take everything at once. It absorbs gradually, continuously, balancing what it takes with what it can support. And over time, that movement creates structure, channels, pathways, a network that becomes more stable with each passing season. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine those pathways remaining even after the root itself is gone. Spaces within the soil where water can move, where air can circulate, where new roots can follow. Nothing is lost. Everything becomes part of what comes next. And within that continuity, there is a quiet form of memory, not stored, but lived. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently. Because just like the soil, your body also holds patterns. Patterns of tension, patterns of release, patterns that repeat without needing to be directed. And right now, those patterns are shifting toward stillness, toward rest, toward quiet balance. There's a rhythm to this plant that is easy to follow once it is noticed. It does not grow endlessly. It grows, pauses, and returns, a cycle of cut and regrow. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine standing beside a plant that has reached its full height for the season, its leaves broad, its structure complete. Then, gently, it is cut back, not removed entirely, just reduced. And for a brief moment, it appears smaller, quieter. But beneath the surface, nothing has been lost. The root system remains, energy stored, ready. Within a few weeks, new growth begins, small at first, then expanding, returning to its previous form. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to relax even more. Because this cycle is not one of loss, it is one of renewal. Each cut does not weaken the plant. It activates it, stimulates regrowth, encourages the system to continue, and with each cycle, leaves are produced again. Nutrients are gathered again, returned again, a repeating loop. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine that rhythm aligning with your breath. Inhale, expansion. Exhale, release. Growth, return. Growth, return. Nothing is held permanently. Nothing is lost completely. Everything moves through phases, and within that movement, balance is maintained. Now imagine placing those freshly cut leaves onto the soil. They begin to soften, break down, return their nutrients. The cycle continues. No interruption, no reset, just continuation. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body fully supported. Because this rhythm is not something that needs to be managed constantly. It unfolds naturally, and as you rest within it, you may begin to sense that the same pattern exists within you. Moments of activity, moments of rest, moments of release. And right now, you are in the part of the cycle where everything can slow, where everything can soften, where nothing needs to be held, just like the plant, just like the soil, just like the quiet systems that continue without effort. And as that rhythm settles deeply, you can drift further into stillness, where everything moves gently, and nothing asks for more than what is already here. There's another layer to this system, one that remains almost entirely invisible, even when we are looking directly at it. Beneath the roots, beneath the soil structure, beneath even the minerals themselves, there is a network, not made of wires, not constructed, but grown. A living network of microorganisms, fungi, and bacteria interacting continuously, forming connections that extend far beyond a single plant. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine the soil not as something still, but as something active, filled with movement too small to see. Fungal threads, known in biology as mycelium, extend outward through the soil, forming connections between plant roots. These networks can transport nutrients, water, and chemical signals across distances, linking multiple plants into a shared system. This is sometimes referred to as a mycorrhizal network, not a structure imposed from above, but one that emerges naturally through interaction. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to soften even more. Because within this network, something subtle happens. Plants do not function entirely alone. They participate. They exchange. They respond to one another. A plant with access to deeper nutrients may contribute to the surrounding system. Another plant, under stress, may receive signals or support through these connections, not in a way that is conscious, but in a way that is coordinated, balanced, responsive. Now imagine that deep-rooted plant once more, its roots extending downward, its leaves returning nutrients to the surface, but also its presence influencing the network around it, feeding microbes, supporting fungal connections, enhancing the overall structure of the soil community. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your awareness drifting gently through that network, not focusing on any one point, just sensing the continuity. Because systems like this are not built in isolation. They develop through relationships, and when one part of the system becomes stronger, the effects ripple outward, quietly, gradually, without disruption. Now imagine a garden where this network has had time to develop. Years, not weeks. The soil is not compacted. It is structured, porous, alive with activity. Water moves through it easily. Air circulates. Roots grow without resistance. And beneath it all, the network continues. Connecting, balancing, sustaining. Take another slow breath in. And as you exhale, let your body sink deeper into rest. Because this idea of connection, of quiet support beneath the surface, reflects something deeper. That stability does not come from isolated strength. It comes from integration, from systems that support one another without needing to be directed. And as you rest within that idea, you may begin to sense a similar quiet support within yourself. A system that continues to function, even when you are not thinking about it. Breathing, circulating, balancing, always there. One of the most overlooked elements in any system is time, not as something measured in minutes or hours, but as something that allows processes to unfold, gradually, without force. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a system that is not rushed. A system that develops over seasons, over years, over cycles that repeat and refine themselves. The plant we have been following does not produce its full effect immediately. It establishes first. Roots grow deeper. The soil begins to shift. Microbial communities adjust, and only over time does the full cycle become visible. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to relax even more deeply. Because this is how many natural systems function, not through immediate results, but through gradual accumulation, each cycle building on the last, each season adding something small, and over time, those small additions become significant. Now imagine a garden in its first year. The soil is still adjusting. The system is beginning. Then the second year. The plant has established. The cycles begin to repeat. By the third year, the soil is noticeably different, richer, more stable, more responsive. Nothing dramatic happened in a single moment, but over time, everything changed. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling deeper into stillness. Because time, in this context, is not something to manage. It is something to allow. Processes unfold whether we observe them or not. Growth continues whether we measure it or not. And systems that are given time tend to stabilize in ways that forced systems cannot. Now imagine stepping back from that garden, not watching every detail, not tracking every change, just allowing it to continue and returning later, to find that it has deepened, that it has become more complete. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently. Because just like the soil, your body also responds to time. When not rushed, when not forced, it settles, it balances, it restores. And right now, you are moving into that same state, where time slows, where processes continue quietly, where nothing needs to be accelerated. And as that feeling deepens, you can drift further into rest, carried gently by the same quiet force that shapes the soil, the roots, and the steady cycles of the earth. There's a noticeable difference between systems that are pushed to produce and systems that are allowed to unfold. In agriculture, forcing often means accelerating growth through concentrated inputs. Nutrients are applied in precise quantities. Water is delivered on schedule. Conditions are adjusted to maximize output within a limited time frame. And this approach works. It produces results that are visible, measurable, immediate. But there is another way growth can occur, not accelerated, not controlled, but supported. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a system where nothing is being forced to grow faster than it naturally would. Roots extend at their own pace. Leaves emerge when conditions allow. Microbial activity rises and falls with temperature, moisture, and organic input. Everything responds. Nothing is pushed. In soil ecology, this kind of system tends to regulate itself more effectively. Nutrient release aligns more closely with plant demand. Water retention improves gradually. Biological diversity increases, creating stability. Not instantly, but steadily. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body softening even more deeply, because there is something calming in that kind of system. A system that does not require constant correction, that does not collapse without intervention, that continues because it is balanced, not because it is maintained. Now imagine a garden where no fertilizers are added, no schedules enforced, only organic matter returned, leaves, stems, natural cycles repeating. At first the change is subtle, but over time the soil becomes darker, more structured, more alive. Plants growing within it become more resilient, less reactive to stress, more consistent. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift into that space. Because this idea extends beyond soil, it reflects a broader principle, that not everything improves through pressure. Some systems improve through release, through allowing, through stepping back. Now, imagine applying that same idea to your own body. Right now, there is no need to force relaxation, no need to make anything happen. You can simply allow your breath to move naturally. Allow your muscles to release gradually. Allow your thoughts to slow without directing them. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel how little effort is required. Because just like the soil, your body knows how to return to balance when it is not being pushed. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be fixed. Only allowed. And as that feeling deepens, you can drift further into stillness, where everything continues gently, without pressure, without urgency, and without resistance. Efficiency is often measured in speed, output, and optimization. How quickly something is produced, how much is generated, how little is wasted. But in natural systems, efficiency takes on a different form. It is not about speed, it is about alignment. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, Imagine a system where every part supports another, where outputs become inputs, where nothing accumulates without purpose, where nothing is discarded without transformation. This is the kind of efficiency that emerges in ecosystems, not engineered, but evolved, over time, through countless interactions. Now imagine the plant we have been following within that system. Its roots draw nutrients from deep layers. Its leaves gather energy from sunlight. When those leaves are cut and returned to the soil, they decompose quickly, feeding microorganisms. Those microorganisms, in turn, release nutrients in forms that plants can use again. A loop, continuous, self-sustaining. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to settle even deeper, because this kind of efficiency does not require oversight. It does not depend on constant adjustment. It operates through relationships that have stabilized over time, and within that stability, energy is used carefully. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is excessive. Everything moves in balance. Now imagine a compost system enhanced by this plant. Materials that would normally take weeks to break down begin to transform more quickly. Heat rises. Microbial activity increases. The process accelerates, not through force, but through compatibility. The plant's composition supports the system, and the system responds. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body fully supported now. Because this idea of efficiency without force reflects something deeper. That systems function best when their parts are aligned, not competing, not resisting, but working together. Now imagine your breath once more. Inhale. Air enters. Oxygen moves through your body. Cells respond. Energy is produced. Exhale. Release. A cycle. Efficient. Continuous. Unforced. You do not need to manage it. It happens, just like the processes beneath the soil. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently. Because as you move deeper into this state of rest, your body is doing the same thing, balancing, regulating, restoring, quietly, without effort. And as that rhythm continues, steady and calm, you can drift further into stillness, where everything is already working, already aligned, and already at ease. There is a tendency in many systems to see things as separate. Soil is treated as one thing, plants as another, nutrients as something added from outside. But in natural systems, these boundaries are not as clear as they appear. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine the soil not as a container, but as part of a continuous process. Roots move through it. Microorganisms transform it. Water flows within it. Air passes through its spaces. Nothing is isolated. Everything is interacting. In ecology, this is often described as an integrated system, where each component influences and is influenced by the others. The plant we have been following is not acting independently. It is part of this network. Its roots interact with soil organisms. Its leaves return nutrients that feed microbial life. Those microbes, in turn, support other plants, a continuous exchange. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body relaxing even more deeply. Because this idea of connection extends beyond the soil. It reflects a broader pattern. That systems we often think of as separate are, in fact, interconnected. Now imagine standing in that garden again. The plants are not competing in isolation, they are participating in a shared environment, each contributing in different ways, each receiving in different ways. Balance emerges not from control, but from interaction. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to soften, because separation, when held too tightly, can create tension. A sense that each part must function alone. But when that sense softens, something else appears. Continuity, support, flow. Now imagine your own body, breathing, circulating, regulating, each system connected to the others. No part functioning entirely alone. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel how natural that connection is. Effortless, constant, already in place. And as you rest within that awareness, you may begin to sense that the same pattern exists everywhere. Not separate, but connected. Not isolated, but continuous. And as that thought settles gently, you can drift deeper into stillness, where everything moves together, quietly and without effort. There's a question that begins to form when we step back from all the systems, all the inputs, all the processes. What remains when nothing is added? Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a piece of land left undisturbed. No fertilizer, no external input, just time. At first, the soil may appear limited. Nutrients may seem insufficient. But over time, something begins to change. Plants grow. They die back. They return organic matter to the soil. Microorganisms process that material. Nutrients are released. The system begins to build itself, not quickly, but steadily. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body settling even deeper. Because this process is often overlooked. It does not produce immediate results. It does not create rapid change, but it creates continuity. Now imagine introducing a plant into that system. A plant that draws nutrients from deeper layers. A plant that produces large amounts of organic material. A plant that returns those nutrients quickly. The cycle begins to accelerate. Not through force, but through reinforcement. Each part supporting the next. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently. Because what remains in this system is not emptiness, it is potential. A system that can build itself, that can restore itself, that can continue without needing constant addition. Now imagine that soil again. After time has passed, it is no longer limited, it is structured, rich, alive, and nothing external was required to create that change. Only cycles, only time, only continuity. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body fully relaxed now. Because this idea that systems can sustain themselves can be deeply calming. There is less to manage, less to control, less to maintain, and more to allow. Now imagine resting within that idea. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be fixed. Everything is already moving toward balance. Just like the soil, just like the plant, just like your breath. And as that feeling deepens, you can drift further into rest, where everything is already enough and nothing more is required. There are systems that require constant attention, constant input, constant adjustment to continue functioning. They depend on regular additions, on timing, on precision. And when those inputs stop, the system begins to slow, weaken, or change. But there are also systems that do not ask for more, not because they produce less, but because they are structured differently. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine a system that continues without needing to be fed from outside. Not empty, not inactive, but complete within itself. The plant we have been following exists within such a system. Once established, it does not require replanting. Its roots remain. Its growth cycles continue. Its leaves return nutrients to the soil, and that soil gradually becomes more capable of supporting life without additional input. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body relaxing even more deeply. Because this kind of system reduces demand, not through limitation, but through balance. When nutrients are cycled efficiently, less needs to be added. When soil structure improves, less intervention is required. When biological processes stabilize, fewer corrections are needed. Everything begins to sustain itself. Now imagine a field that has reached this state, not dependent on frequent input, not requiring constant oversight. Just continuing, season after season. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to rest in that image, because there's something calming in a system that doesn't ask for more. No urgency, no pressure, just continuity. And as you rest here, you may begin to sense that the same principle applies within you. There is a part of your body that does not need to be pushed, that does not need to be fixed, that continues on its own. Breathing, regulating, restoring, and right now you are allowing that system to take over. At the center of this story, there is a simple idea, so simple that it is easy to overlook. Fertility can be grown, not purchased. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow that idea to settle gently, not as a statement to analyze, but as a possibility, a shift in perspective. Because in many systems, fertility is treated as something external, something that must be added, measured, applied, repeated. But in natural systems, fertility emerges from cycles, from interactions, from processes that continue over time. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body fully supported now. Because this idea does not require immediate change. It does not demand action. It simply exists, a different way of seeing. Now imagine a garden where this idea is understood, not intellectually, but practically. Plants are grown not just for harvest, but for what they return. Soil is treated not as a medium, but as a living system. Inputs are reduced, not by force, but because they are no longer needed in the same way. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift gently. Because this shift does not happen suddenly. It unfolds, gradually, through observation, through experience, through time, and once it is seen, it changes how everything else is understood. Not dramatically, but quietly. Now imagine that idea extending beyond the garden, into the way systems are built, into the way resources are used, into the way balance is maintained. Not through constant addition, but through continuity. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body sinking deeper into rest. Because as this idea settles, it brings with it a sense of ease. Less to manage, less to control, less to maintain, and more to allow. And as you rest within that space, you can drift further into stillness, where everything is already unfolding, already supported, and already complete. There is often a moment, not sudden, not dramatic, when everything begins to settle into place. Not as a conclusion, but as a quiet realization. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine standing at the edge of everything you have just heard, not trying to hold on to it, not trying to organize it, but simply allowing it to exist as a gentle awareness. A plant that grows without constant input, a system that cycles nutrients naturally, a rhythm that continues without force. None of it needs to be proven right now. None of it needs to be applied. It can simply remain, soft, unresolved, present. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body sinking deeper into rest. Because realization, in this sense, is not about understanding every detail. It is about noticing a pattern that feels familiar, even if it has not been fully seen before. Now imagine that quiet garden once more. The same plants, the same soil, the same slow cycles continuing. Nothing has changed, and yet something feels different. Not in the garden, but in how it is perceived. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to soften. Because sometimes the most meaningful changes are not external. They are shifts in attention, subtle, gradual, almost unnoticeable, until they are felt. Now, imagine letting go of the need to define what this means. Letting go of the need to categorize it. Just allowing it to be part of the background, like the steady rhythm of your breath, like the quiet processes beneath the soil. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel how natural it is to release, to not hold, to not grasp. Everything continues without needing to be controlled, and as that realization deepens, you can drift further into stillness, where nothing needs to be understood, and everything is already enough. As the story begins to quiet, there is a gentle shift. Less information, less structure, more space. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your body to soften completely. Your shoulders relaxed, your arms heavy, your breath slow and even. There's nothing more to follow, nothing more to process. Only the quiet rhythm that remains. Now imagine that same soil we have been exploring, not active in a visible way, not changing in a noticeable moment, but still full of life, still supporting everything above it. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel yourself becoming part of that stillness. Not separate, not observing, just resting within it. Because at this point, the story no longer needs to move forward. It begins to settle, just like your breath, just like your body, just like the quiet systems beneath the earth. Now imagine the plant again, not growing rapidly, not being cut, just present. Leaves resting, roots steady. Nothing urgent, nothing required. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to drift even further. Because this is the space where everything slows, where thoughts soften, where the need to follow disappears, and only the rhythm remains, in and out, slow, gentle, unforced. Now let that rhythm carry you. No direction, no effort, just movement, soft and continuous. And as you rest here, you may begin to notice that sleep is not something you enter. It is something you allow, just like the soil, just like the plant, just like the quiet systems that continue without interruption. Take one more slow breath in, and as you exhale, let everything soften completely. There's nothing left to do, nothing left to follow. Only rest, only stillness, only the quiet continuation of everything that does not need to be held. And as that stillness deepens, you can drift gently into sleep, carried by the same calm rhythm that has been here all along. Now, there is no need to follow ideas anymore. The story has softened, the details have faded, and what remains is something quieter. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your awareness drift slightly further away from words. You may still hear them, but you do not need to hold on to them. They can pass gently, like leaves floating across still water. Your body is heavier now, more settled, supported without effort, just like soil holding everything above it. Now imagine that soil again, not in motion, not changing, just resting, and beneath it, the slow, quiet presence of roots, still, unmoving, but alive. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body sink deeper. There's nothing to follow, nothing to understand, only a gentle awareness that everything continues without you needing to be involved. Just like the plant, just like the earth, just like your breath, in and out. Slower now, softer, almost effortless, and as that rhythm continues, your thoughts begin to spread out, not disappearing, just becoming lighter, more distant, like something moving further away with each breath. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift just a little further. No direction, no intention, just drifting. There's a place where wakefulness begins to dissolve, not suddenly, not completely, but gradually, a soft edge. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, imagine standing at that edge, not stepping forward, not stepping back, just resting there, where thoughts are slower, where the body is quiet, where nothing feels urgent anymore. Now imagine that garden again, but softer, less defined. The shapes are still there, but they are blurred. The details no longer matter. Only the feeling remains. Calm, still, continuous. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body becoming even heavier. Your muscles fully relaxed, your breath almost silent. Because this is a space where effort fades, where control is no longer needed, where everything begins to settle on its own. Now imagine lying on that soft earth, supported, held, nothing to do, nothing to change, just resting. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow your awareness to soften even more. The edges of thought fade. The need to follow disappears, and only the rhythm remains. In and out, slow, gentle, fading, and as you rest here, you may begin to notice that sleep is already close, not something you need to reach, but something that is already here, waiting quietly. Take one more slow breath in, and as you exhale, let everything drift, further, softer, deeper, and as that softness expands, you can move gently into sleep, without effort, without awareness, carried by the same quiet rhythm that has always been there. At this point, there's nothing left to follow. No more ideas to hold, no more images to keep, only a quiet sense of release. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your body sink fully into the surface beneath you. Completely supported, completely at ease. Your shoulders are soft, your arms are heavy, your face relaxed. Even the smallest muscles have begun to let go. Now imagine everything you were holding today, every thought, every task, every small tension gently loosening. Not all at once, but slowly, naturally, like leaves falling when they are ready. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel that release continuing. Nothing needs to be carried forward. Nothing needs to be resolved tonight. Everything can wait. Everything can rest. Now imagine the soil once more, still, quiet, holding everything without effort, and beneath it, roots resting, not growing, not moving, just present. Take a slow breath in, And as you exhale, allow your awareness to settle into that stillness. Because this is where everything lets go. Not forced, not directed, just allowed. The edges of awareness are becoming softer now, less defined, more distant. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your thoughts drifting further away. You may still notice them, but they no longer hold your attention. They pass gently, without weight, without urgency. Now imagine the sound of something very soft, distant rain, a quiet breeze moving through leaves, not something to focus on, just something that exists in the background. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your breathing become even slower, even softer, almost fading. Your body is fully at rest now, supported, still. There is no effort left, no need to adjust, no need to think, only the gentle rhythm that continues on its own. In and out, barely noticeable, like the slow movement of the earth itself. Now imagine that everything around you is becoming quieter, not empty, just calm. A deep, steady calm that does not change. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift further, further away from thought, further into rest, where nothing is required, nothing is expected, only stillness, only quiet, only rest. And as that quiet deepens, you can continue to drift gently and naturally into sleep, carried by the same calm presence that has been with you all along. There's no direction now, no path to follow, no place to arrive, only a gentle drifting. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel how little effort remains. Your body is resting completely. Your breath is soft. Your awareness is light. Thoughts may still appear, but they do not stay. They move slowly, like something carried by a quiet current. Now imagine floating, not in water, not in air, but in something softer, something that holds you without resistance, without movement, just enough to support. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift a little further. No control, no intention, just drifting. Everything is slower now. Even time feels softer, less defined, moments stretching gently into one another. Nothing separate, nothing distinct, only a continuous, quiet presence. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let go even more. There is nothing left to hold, nothing left to follow. Only rest. If any thoughts remain, they are quiet now. Faint, distant, like something fading into the background. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, notice how those thoughts no longer need attention. They can pass, gently, without interruption, without meaning. Now imagine a final image, the soil at night. Still, undisturbed, nothing moving, nothing changing, and yet everything continues beneath the surface. Quietly, without effort, take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, feel your body completely at rest. Your breath almost invisible, your awareness barely there, because this is the space where sleep begins to take over. Not suddenly, but naturally. Now let everything soften even more. No edges, no structure, no separation, only a gentle, continuous calm. Take one more slow breath in, and as you exhale, allow everything to fade. Further, softer, deeper, and as that softness continues, you drift fully into sleep, without noticing the moment it happens, carried by the same quiet rhythm that has always been there. You are safe now. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to hold, nothing you need to remember. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, Feel everything soften even more. Your body is completely supported. Your breath is gentle. Your awareness is fading into quiet. You are safe now, drifting slowly, without effort, without direction, just drifting. Take another soft breath in, and as you exhale, let everything go a little further. There's no need to stay awake, no need to listen, no need to follow. Only rest, only stillness, only the quiet rhythm that continues on its own. You are safe now. Drift away, gently, softly, without noticing. Drift away, slowly, softly, drift away. Take a gentle breath in, and as you exhale, feel everything dissolve into rest. No thoughts, no tension, no effort, only calm, only quiet, only sleep. Drift away, further now, deeper, softer. Drift away. You are safe, you are held, you are resting. Drift away, and let everything fade. Completely, quietly, naturally. Drift away. You are safe now. There's nothing you need to hold on to. Nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to follow. Just let the words drift. The way leaves settle softly onto quiet soil. The way roots rest deep beneath the surface, unseen and undisturbed. Your breath is slow now. Gentle. Effortless. In and out. And with each breath, you can let go a little more. Let go of the day. Let go of the thoughts that tried to stay. Let go of everything that no longer needs your attention. Everything can wait. Everything can rest. Just like the earth at night. Still, quiet, continuing without effort. You don't need to listen anymore. You don't need to stay awake. Just drift. Softly, slowly, naturally. Drift away. Further now. Deeper. Softer. You are safe. You are held. You are resting. And sleep is already here. Just let go and drift away.